It's not magic if you understand this new science. It's actually completely understandable. And Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who founded the Center for UFO Studies, and before that was Project Blue Book's astronomer, who infamously, said that this wave of sightings in Michigan was swamp gas. Remember that guy? He later recanted that and then fully said that these were obviously real and that they were almost certainly extraterrestrial, and then he qualified it, but they might be interdimensional. Well, let me clarify this. This is one of my pet peeves. I was at a meeting with the Board of Noetic Sciences, and God bless Edgar Mitchell's soul. He just passed away in the past week or so, and was a good friend and someone that I helped bring along in this field. And there was a man presenting there named Jacques Vallée, and he says, well, and the Noetic Sciences Board are very interested in this subject, and he said, well, I'm not so sure they're extraterrestrial, but they're interdimensional or transdimensional. Those are synonyms. And I said, hello, this thing is actually interdimensional. And I've been in laboratories where they can put a resonant field frequency around this, dematerialize it, teleport it to another point, or hold it in that state for a week and then have it rematerialize. So saying they're interdimensional isn't an answer. If they're here and they've gone beyond the speed of light, they are a priori or required to be also interdimensional or transdimensional. So they're both. It's like asking, is this orange round or is it a fruit? Or is it the color orange? And your choice is one of those, when of course it's all three. You understand what I'm saying? So, it's nice. So, that's what I have first thing every morning, fruit and orange. So, I live on oranges. That's how I bench press 410. Now, I do eat other things. But, so this understanding of consciousness and actually what's folded within us is very ancient Greece. Know thyself, and to thine own self be true. If you truly know yourself, you know the unbounded being, the great being, because that's within, although not your individual ego, but it's there shining within all things. If you know that, you understand every realm, whether it go from the angelic and celestial to other worlds that are ET. But there is a huge cosmological indigestion that goes with this, because people lack discernment sometimes, and they lump everything together. So someone may have an experience with something that's from another dimension, let's say the quote afterlife. Like when I died, when I was 17, I don't know does everyone know that story? If not, I'll go through it another time. And had this near-death experience, and it was amazing since I was raised as a very devout atheist, a very serious atheist, or agnostic. They didn't believe in anything. And I had this experience, and there are other dimensions. And I left my physical body, but I also left my so-called body of light, and I was just this point of consciousness, causality, the so-called causal body, the thought body, and experienced the cosmos that way. Beautiful. And then I realized that everything, everywhere I gazed, and I went out into space, was pure consciousness resonating as whatever that object was, a star, light, a planet, space itself. And it was beautiful, unspeakably beautiful. And then I realized that, well, this experience was kind of tragic because I got so sick I almost died. But, I mean, I came back. Here I am, obviously. Well, allegedly. And what that taught me was that actually all of that was always within me. It just took that experience to introduce it to me. And so people often will ask me, where did you go? And I say, well, on the one hand, I went here and here. On the other hand, I didn't go anywhere. All I did was awaken to what was already folded within the structure of my own conscious awareness, to where that drop of your individuality merged and became one with the ocean of the unbounded. And that's really all meditation is our practices, and there are many ways to get there that allow you to have the drop of your individuality join in a very gentle and peaceful way with the infinity of the vast ocean of quiet, pure, conscious mind. And the more you practice it, the more you can go from individuality to unbounded consciousness. And then eventually you remain unbounded consciousness while you're also the individuality walking and moving in the world. That's called cosmic consciousness. That's the first higher state of consciousness. We'll go through all these over the course of this weekend. Eventually, you can be in your physical body and experience not only that state, but then the ability to have celestial perception and the dawning of all the so-called Vedic cities, the ancient Siddhis cities from ancient Vedic and other ancient traditions, Native American, ancient Egyptian, Gnostic Christian. I mean, it's everywhere, where you then have the ability to not only perceive the fine essence of things intuitively, but also directly. You hear of pure-hearted children who really do see the kind of aura and light around and within flowers and plants and what have you, or have this connection with animals or with others. And when I was a child, I was so excited about the idea of flying because I always had lucid dreaming, flying dream. Everyone have had a lucid dreaming where you're flying, full color. How many people have had a full colored lucid dream? Almost everyone. You're actually in that state, traveling in your body of light, conscious body of light. That's what that is. And so I had that a lot when I was a child. And then I thought, well, I want to be able to do that in my body. And one time I was so excited that I levitated from one chair to a couch in my living room. I was maybe 4 or 5 or 6 years old, and it was very exciting. I didn't know quite how I did it. I think it was just a state of joy and bliss and energy, and I just did it. And that was the beginning of me realizing, wow, there are all these abilities we have. So these so-called cities, which are spelled Siddhis, which are abilities, powers that's within every human being also. So a short list of them are levitation, materialization, dematerialization, teleportation, bilocation, trilocation, the ability to go into deep consciousness and obtain knowledge one item at a time and eventually many items. It's a level called the Ritambara Pragya. We'll get into what Ritambara Pragya is. And so it goes, and there's really no limit to this. And you've heard of many of these, and they've been dismissed as sort of mythological or, sort of allegorical. They're not, they're literal. And those begin to unfold as you experience this deeper state of consciousness on a regular basis. And so it goes. So there are all these levels of consciousness that begin to unfold that are deeper or higher, depending on how you want to look at it. But it's all based on the simple experience of the quiet state of mind, becoming centered and calm. And in that calmness and quiet mind, beginning to be aware of what consciousness is and becoming then just consciousness. And I'm talking about what you are conscious of. This is, again, materialism and reductionism. I'm talking the unitive state of the experience of just pure, quiet consciousness. The space between the perceptions and thoughts, the background. So everyone, all of you are hearing me right now. So just for a moment, think about the fact that you're awake and then reflect deeply on what that is. You're awake and she's awake and he's awake. And that awareness is a singularity. Your individualities are unique, your thoughts are unique, your perceptions may be unique in how you process them. But that whereby you are conscious is a singularity. And therefore we really are, while once separate, we think of it, an individual, we are simultaneously always a singularity. And if you begin to experience that in your daily life and not only just intellectualize it, but experience it, what's beautiful is that at that point, you are really ready to be an ambassador to these other civilizations. Because it doesn't matter if the ET is like that Atacama humanoid. The adults are about a foot tall. And, people, oh my God, what is that? Or 30 feet tall, or 12 feet tall, or look like, monkeys with hair on their heads like we do, or have no hair, or have flesh or an exoskeleton, or have all the external things that would freak you out because it's so different from how we look, become an external triviality, an unimportant. It's fascinating and it's beautiful, the diversity. But what you're really anchored in is that they're awake and we're awake, and there's this transcendent level of connection that goes beyond all separation. That's the beginning of being able to function as an ambassador to these civilizations. In our planet, if you want to be ambassador to France, it's because you gave a couple $1 million to the Republican National Committee or the Democratic National Committee or something. In these other civilizations, which have attained levels of development where they're interstellar and where there's no shortage of anything, it's from an abundance. We'll talk about this and how that alters the evolutionary path of a species. They are liberated from slavery at that point. Punchline, everyone on planet Earth is basically a slave of a relatively small number of people who are running the plantation known as their Earth into the ground. So it's time for us to get uppity and throw off the shackles of our slavery, because I don't care what your color or where you're from, you've been enslaved. By the way, it doesn't have to be anything violent. It's just saying, no, we're going to do this. Because if we go forward, we'll just leave them behind. They only have the power. These folks in these very powerful positions have the power because we give it up to them. And we give it up to them every single day of our lives. So we take it back. That's all. Yep, it's time. It's way past time. So if you have this understanding in your consciousness, then these civilizations really become not alien, but they are other kind of almost like fractal, infinite diversity manifestations of this quantum hologram of conscious, intelligent beings that is actually familiar to each of us by our having gone within. So if you want to be an ambassador to other worlds and to outer space, you need to first become a true master of your own inner space. And that's really what this weekend is all about. That's what I want to share and give you the techniques and the knowledge so that you can each do this on your own, so that if I don't exist at all, you have that ability. And oh, thank you. So I think this is where we're wanting to go. And if you understand some of what I've just shared, you'll be able to then understand what we're going to do tonight. Because what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to first, after we take a break at about 9:30 and stretch and get something and be sure we're all awake. I'm never tired till 2 or 3 in the morning. So if those of you who are morning people, I do apologize. But you can, we're not babies. You can be awake till 11, right? Oh yeah. Goo goo gaga. Okay. I know I'm an emergency doctor, so you go all night. When my training, we'd have to work 36 hours nonstop, and if you couldn't do it, they'd just kick you and say, "Wake up." Anyway, it's a kinder and gentler world now in medicine, believe it or not, than it was 30 some years ago. But if you understand this central concept, which has been demonstrated in so many elegant ways in physics, and actually one of the most beautiful ways is being demonstrated right now. I've just spent quite a few hours with a gentleman, a beautiful soul named Adam Curry, who has worked with Dr. John at Princeton and has developed a beautiful, amazing technology that we hope to show you tomorrow, some of it, where you can think to this lamp that's hooked to a random number generator type sensor system and want it to turn blue, it turns blue, turn red, turns red. And he did an experiment in San Francisco where he put these, big 1,000-pound cones out and just didn't tell anyone what they were, and it just said, just think a color. It just had a sign, think a color. So if people would just think a color, and they would go to that color, it was a 90% concurrence. It's amazing work that Adam is doing, Adam Curry, and the people working with him. And it's just another demonstration of what has been demonstrated for 100 years in various ways, but in a much more modern and elegant way. And in fact, an app is being developed that will allow people to do that we would love to incorporate into the CSETI Contact app to help train ambassadors. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's beautiful. So there's so many things like this happening, and we need to understand that this is all possible because our conscious mind isn't separate from anything. And we do affect one another. We affect the planet, and we affect other stars. So the operating system, I call it the universal communicator, is this unbounded, quiet state of consciousness, this non-local mind. But don't think you have to have some super flashy, ultra-mystical thing to do it. These were ordinary people walking on the street of San Francisco. A sign said, think whatever color you'd like. They'd do so, and the thing would turn that color. They weren't people who had just come out of an ashram where they laid on a bed of nails for 90 years. So the point is that this is the nature of your own mind and thought. It is innate. It is your birthright. Own it, use it, enjoy it, experiment with it, have fun with it. So that's what this is about. The techniques I'm going to share are ones that help you develop that power of consciousness, the accuracy of it in remote viewing, so that you can see remote places, and something beyond the simplicity of, say, a random number generator or a lamp, being able to interface and communicate with other higher intelligence species that are not human. And that's an order of magnitude beyond just switching the color on a lamp or doing a random number generator, because now you're not dealing with an inanimate object, you're dealing with another culture, another person. You see what I'm saying? So, but those techniques will help you have the confidence and understanding that this is your ability that's always there. You're not having to sort of find something that you don't already have. You already own it. And since you already own it, you can do it. The main reason people don't do more is because they don't believe they can. It's the old saying, as ye have faith, so shall your powers and blessings be. Or if you had the faith of a mustard seed. All these things come from this understanding. You have to have, and by faith I don't mean belief in something that may or may not be true. It's an affirmative, positive assumption about what is possible, so that you affirm it can be. And really all of you in your lives do this all the time. I mean, if you're an airline pilot and you're wanting to land the jet on the runway, you have to believe you can put that thing down. If I have to do a chest tube into someone who's just got run over by a bus and they're bleeding into the thoracic cavity, I have to believe I can do that. So, or whatever it is you're doing. So whatever it is you're doing in your life, you have to believe you can do it. You have to believe you can navigate your car down the 10 freeway, which is quite an act of accomplishment, really, when you think about it. My God. It's much more difficult to drive down any of our freeways than it would be to go interstellar. Because there's no traffic jams transdimensionally. There aren't. See, life gets simpler the more advanced the civilization. The reason our life is so complex is because we've been behaving like a bunch of dumb monkeys. So when you become more intelligent, things become simpler. And when the technology is truly elegant and advanced, it is simpler. Hello? Is somebody's phone? Or is that, I don't know what that is. So we want to be able to pull together all this understanding into an operating paradigm so that everyone listening can go from where we are now to going out under the stars, or even if it's bad weather, sitting with a few people in your house, go into these states, remote view civilizations, make contact, and ask them to interface with us. And they can interface in a million different ways. A part of what's going to be tomorrow night is going to be a really drilling down on all the strange things, what Dr. Jana Hynek called high strangeness, that our CSETI ambassador teams have experienced and how they happen and how to interpret them. I mean, for example, this was just a rose quartz sphere that a guy at NASA gave to me. And a few years back, we were up in Joshua Tree National Park, and we had one of these, it was a radar detector, actually, that picks up radar. And we were doing our deep meditation in a circle, and the protocol is as follows. First, you'd center into deep, quiet meditation. Then, after you're in that quiet, calm state, which can take you 10 minutes or 10 nanoseconds if you're very experienced, you then connect to that unbounded component of mind and begin to remote view the area around you, space around the Earth, our solar system, our galaxy, all the way out. And if you lock onto and perceive or sense an extraterrestrial civilization, you connect to them, and with humility and as an ambassador, invite them to come to wherever you are. And at that point, you do something called coherent thought sequencing, because you've now had a remote view and locked onto the craft, and you show them where you are, and you then show them from wherever you're sensing they are, you show them our solar system, the Earth, North America, the West Coast, the high desert, Palm Springs, desert hot springs, right here, zoom. But from the deeper level of consciousness, and the thought is very coherent and clear. We also use lasers and electronic tones in case our minds aren't too sharp, in case we're a little bit off on our cosmic GPS, so that they get that. And then we just stay in a state of welcoming. Now, most people want the mothership to land and materialize and go on board like a Steven Spielberg movie. And that we've had experiences where they've materialized like that. But most of the time it's something stranger. So in this one case I'm going to give you, we had a series of amazing sightings that you'll see some images of them. And up near the Orion sector, near the Sirius and Orion, were a group of what I call cosmic flash bulbs, just objects that turn on and turn off. And there was one, and then two, and then eventually there were a dozen of them, way up. And I was holding this crystal like this, and I was connecting with my consciousness in sort of a certain position in my body to align my consciousness and bioelectric field in this crystalline structure with their spacecraft. And at that point, out of my left palm and coming into my right and this crystalline object were a series of pulses that eventually lasted 23 minutes that downloaded through the radar detector that we recorded, that were sounds that the radar detector won't make if you put it next to a police car or something like that. Very anomalous. And it was a electronic, transdimensional, extraterrestrial communication sequence witnessed by 40 people that we have on audio tape, which I later translated That's in the last chapter of the 4th book I wrote called Extraterrestrial Contact, Countdown to Transformation. And what's fascinating about that experience is that this thing, this crystalline object, had encoded within it, transdimensionally, information about this planet and its relationship with other civilizations going forward for about 500,000 years. And it was so strange that I'd put my hand out like this. After this happened, my entire neurocircuitry was almost burned out. I mean, I was barely able to, it was like, wow, it was amazing. I wanted to just dematerialize. And people were, wow, this is amazing what's going on. And all this activity we're filming up in space. You'll see it. And at the end of it, I went around to each person and I would put this in their hand. Someone come up here and I'll show you. And don't be shy. I don't bite. I put it in their hand and I would put my palm over their hand like this. And everyone, we're out in the middle of Joshua Tree National Park. There was all this spark and light. It was like a Van der Graaf generation, but in sort of this beautiful light that everyone could see coming out of our hands. And I went around the circle and did this with everyone. And it was a transdimensional conveyance of that energy. I was so completely blown away by the time I got back down. At that time, we were staying in Palm Springs and had a 45-minute drive each way to get out to this site. And I put this in a bowl. And I just put it in there, and it was so charged with energy still, this cosmic, interstellar, transdimensional ET energy, that it started spinning around the bowl and hopping. And finally, I slammed something down. I said, stop, it's all I can take. I'm ready to go to bed. Otherwise, then it's 4 in. So now people go, wow, that's not what I thought it would be from the MUFON journal. But it was very intimate, very conscious, very present, in a way to many people very abstract, but very, very intimate. So I'm going to describe, it goes all the way from objects that materialize and interact, beings that float and get photographed outside our circle, to electromagnetic signals, to all manner of things. And all of it is based on the reason it happens, and the reason there are now thousands of people all over the world who have set up teams who've had various aspects of this happen. I'm sure a lot of you here have. It's because of the nature of the conscious mind and the fact that these civilizations are eager to connect, not with necessarily the richest people on earth or the politicians or the powerful, but the pure-hearted, regular folks, but who are at least willing to go into their reality a baby step. You may not be able to go into their reality all the way, but at least a baby step into their reality. And baby step, I mean the experience of the pure, quiet state of mind, the state of innocence, and the willingness to be an ambassador to these civilizations without prejudice. Now, what do I mean by without prejudice? I remember some years ago, I was up in New York, and it was when I was sort of mentoring Lawrence Rockefeller on a lot of this, and he was setting up things for the Clintons. And it was after I'd briefed the director of the CIA on all this information. And I was at a salon up in, which is sort of gathering of people at a place in New York, and there were a lot of very well-connected folks at this place on Park Avenue. And my wife and I went, and there were a lot of interesting people there. The wife of the Secretary General, Leah Ghali, Boutros Ghali's wife, and all these folks were there. And there was a woman who stood up, and I was trying to share a lot of these concepts about the need for us, because the Secretary General of the UN was interested, about our need to go beyond a materialist linear view of diplomacy and understand what an interstellar diplomat is required to possess. And at the end of it, there was a woman who said, well, I have read 26 books on UFOs and abductions and mutilations and this and that. And I let her go on for a few minutes. I said, well, madam, with all due respect, you've just taken into your consciousness 26 times more rubbish than someone who's only read one book. And the reason I tell that story is because the literature on this field is so polluted with misunderstanding and fear. And fear is the mind killer. It's the spirit killer. It's the heart killer. It's the opposite of love. And love, if you look at it, the highest manifestation of love that transcends sentimentality. Love ultimately is that magnetic force in the cosmos that brings things together as one. And if you love someone, you want to be one with that person, right? Whereas separation is the opposite of love. And so fear leads to separation. Love leads to oneness or unity or to the all. And so people have to understand that our movies, our video games, our books, our conferences have been populated with frightening ideas and images that were launched in the 1950s by the CIA and have caught like wildfire because of the proclivities of humans to be afraid of something different from themselves. And that fear and anger and mythology has built up to such a point that even when I speak to elementary school children, one of the first questions they ask, aren't you afraid to go out and make contact because don't you think they might attack you or abduct you or mutilate you? Children, 6-year-olds. So the brainwashing couldn't have been done better by Adolf Hitler's henchmen. The brainwashing is virtually complete. And so it's a little bit like that in vogue, free your mind. You know, that song, I love that. I love that song, free your mind. Though you have to free your mind from the web of disinformation, misinformation, mythology, fear, and what have you. And most importantly, of this sort of Manichaean view of it's us and them, or it's good aliens versus the bad aliens. Well, you know what? Here's the deal. You can't prove a negative. It's axiomatic. However, if there is a civilization out there that is interfacing with Earth or near Earth that is a threat to humans, those are the ones a sincere diplomat would want to have a rapprochement and contact with first. Those would be, now I'm not saying that exists, but if it did, I'm quite certain it doesn't. But if it did, to those who are addicted to the paradigm of war and conflict, and you know, it's ironic that the kind of New Age community has been totally taken over, right? So there's nothing more old age than the paradigm of us versus them and Star Wars, which is what the brainwashing is all about. The brainwashing is about laying the foundation for people to accept the cost and blood and treasure of an eschatological end times battle that's interstellar. And that was launched in the 50s. That's the battle Eisenhower lost. We'll get into this more this weekend. The point of the matter is be very careful with that, because if you harbor those concepts and those fears and those prejudices, these civilizations won't come anywhere near. And the reason for it is that they really aren't interested in interacting with racists. It's racism. In our culture, we call racism is between one ethnic group and another. But if you're talking about interplanetary racism, it's the racism of these civilizations, and notice in sort of the UFO and New Age literature, they're always kind of blonde, white, Nordic looking. And the ones that look different are the bad ones. Doesn't this sound like racism to you? It does to me. And so we're dealing with a problem here, and the problem is deep. And I want to talk about the biological and conscious roots of racism for a moment. It has gotten very well established that primates, and particularly chimps that we're most related to, have a proclivity to join each other in troops and what have you, and then engage in organized warfare against another troop or tribe that is different or a threat to territory or what have you. And murder does get committed, and murder being, in this case, a chimp killing another chimp. And interestingly, we're 98% identical with chimpanzees. So there's a very primitive, atavistic, genetic, and biological trigger that can be exploited by demagogues that is within the human reality, the physical human reality, to cause one race to hate another, one religion to hate another, one sex to hate another, one orientation to hate another, whatever it is, all the things that people fight about in our political systems and in the world today, because it serves those who want to have endless war continue, have a divide and conquer mentality, and maintain control. It's all about control.